Wonderful to see you again tonight. Many of you have been with us for over the years now that we've been conducting SCAFI, Southern Cross Alliance for Israel. And it's a pleasure to welcome you all once again. Thank you, David, for choice of songs. I see we have some comments in the chat. Thank you, Greg and others. Beautiful songs, just absolutely love them. And in this time, over the last month, and as we know tonight and today, there's a lot of pressure on in the land of Israel as we come together to share a bit, pray a bit, and celebrate a bit some of our guests who are with us tonight. So it's with great pleasure that I invite our founding rabbi, Rabbi Rosenberg, to come and join us and open with, as usual, I would think he has a story of some kind. Welcome, Rabbi.
Thank you so much, John. The greatest story I have is that I actually just arrived home from celebrating the circumcision, the bris of a grandson. So thank God we're able to participate. But I certainly was hoping to join this particular significant episode of SCAFI, which falls just before the Jewish New Year. My in-laws there in Sydney have a wonderful veranda, and come New Year's Eve, it's prime real estate because they've got this wonderful view of the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And to get a chair there on New Year's Eve is priceless because you can see all the fireworks going off over on the bridge. And upon reflection, how different are these two New Years? The secular New Year, we bring in with fireworks, with loud music, with bubbles of champagne flowing. The only fireworks we hear at the synagogue is the blowing of the shofar, which pierces the silence. They're totally different days. The New Year, Rosh Hashanah, which we'll celebrate Wednesday week, a time of reflection of a year gone by, and a prayer to the Almighty that we should have a good and sweet New Year. It's been a difficult year for the Jewish people. The events of October the 7th, but certainly the aftermath of those events, where I would have thought people would have finally seen the evil of Hamas and their ilk, and rally for Israel, and the fact of the matter is the opposite has occurred. We've seen virulent anti-Semitism rise throughout the world. For me personally, a watershed moment was last November, the 8th, Friday evening, when we were forced to evacuate our synagogue, as I will share with you. To take the story back, I share with you as a book going back 50 years. I was walking up Bondi Road with my father on Shabbat, and a car drives past and calls out "bloody Jew." My father, a Holocaust survivor, came from Poland, says, "I love this country." I look at him and he says, "You see, in Poland, when they call out "bloody Jew," they went and they beat you up. Up here, they drive away. They drive away. The other comment he also rightly observed was, in this country, they hate Greeks, they hate Italians, they hate the English, they hate the Jews. That I can tolerate. You see, in Poland, they only hated Jews. And truth be told, throughout all my years living in Sydney, Melbourne, I've not experienced virulent anti-Semitism, and truth be told, I do look a little bit Jewish. But for me, this changed on that Friday, November the 8th. It was the anniversary of Kristallnacht, that night when the of Austria and Germany were literally burnt to the ground. It was a harbinger of worse things to come. I gave a class that Friday morning to some Christian friends, as I do twice a month, and please God, I'll give another class this Friday on forgiveness. One of the participants on the class, an Viennese Jewess, Ilse, now an elderly woman, reflected back as a little girl. She watched in horror as her synagogue was being burnt to the ground. The place where she came as a little girl to have her bar mitzvah was now in flames, and there was a jeering mob laughing and scorning at this. And she said, I share this story in the hope that never again should such a thing happen. The sad reality is anti-Semitism is back. And it has more virulent than the most virulent we've seen since the Holocaust. As a separate episode that night, as you may know, a burger shack owned by a Palestinian was burnt to the ground, and the rumor was spread that the Jews had done this. And a Palestinian mob had gathered outside this burger shack. It was only a mere 3 blocks up the road, and they began marching towards the shul. Rightly or wrongly, we were told to evacuate, and we followed that instruction. Probably the first time a synagogue in Australia had to be evacuated because of an outside threat of this nature. I wanted to say, I saw the mob coming. I wanted to stay there, but one of our committee members, Stephen Green, says, you can't stay here. You look too Jewish. You'll be a target. So go home. But I heard literally for the next 2 hours the most virulent anti-Israel, anti-Semitic rhetoric that I'd ever heard throughout all my years in this great country, Australia. This all happened as the police were standing next to these probably hundreds of individuals. We've seen it in other instances here around the world, and even here in Sydney and in Melbourne, and we'll hear about it shortly from Freya Leach. The question is, where do we go from here? And briefly said, I think we need to know there's been a change in the reality of the ground. Anti-Semitism is back. What can we do? One thing I believe that we need to reach out to non-Jewish friends, and there are many, because the Jews may be first, they're never the last. And these individuals, this Hamas, it's not only about the Jews, it's an assault on our very values, our Judeo-Christian values, which they want to destroy. And once again, we're very privileged that Mark Leach and his daughter are leading a wonderful campaign that of Never Again is now, and we'll hear from Freya a little bit later on. But I think finally we need to be educated. One of the great refrains that we hear is from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. We must be aware of our Bible. There in the Bible, notwithstanding that there are today 50 Muslim countries, over 100 Christian countries, there's only one Jewish nation. And that nation was not given to us by the United Nations in 1948. It was given to the Jewish people by the Almighty God. In fact, the borders of Israel are very much delineated in the Bible very clearly. From the river to the sea is the land of Israel, God's gift to the Jewish people. And that's something that we need to be aware of, both as Jews and as faithful Christians. So therefore, let us understand that there is a change. Let us engage together with good friends to fight this battle. And let us always remember that the land of Israel is God's gift to the Jewish people. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Rabbi. As usual, always got a good message, and we agree with you. the biblical lands of Israel are well delineated and very much diminished as they are at this present time. And we stand with our friends, our Jewish friends, to be with you and stand with you. It was interesting during the week. I had a conversation with Amir Mammon, who's the Israeli ambassador to Australia. Many of you have met him or seen him at some of the events that we have held in capital cities around the country, and we are planning to be in Adelaide in December. So that looks like it's going to be a go ahead. We'll let you know for those that want to come over or for those that are in Adelaide where the event will be and when it will be. But just pencil in the 4th or the 5th of December at this particular time. So it's been a big week. Amir sends his regards to all of you as he stands sometimes alone, particularly in parliamentary aspects. So we need to be standing with him and praying for him. So yeah, just put that in your diary. It's with great pleasure we introduce our first guest for the night, Yossi Eshed. Yossi, we've met online so far. Introduced to me by Mark Woodry and Sarah Way from IsrAID, who met with Yossi, I think, in Adelaide in the first instance. And I was very interested to know about his position as the new CEO for IsrAID. And of course, he's been involved with JNF and the Zionist Council of New South Wales. He moved to Australia in 2015 with his wife and family, and he's made it his home for this time. So it's with great pleasure that we welcome Yossi to share with us something about his life, his journey, and of course IsrAID, which is his current passion. So welcome, Yossi, and over to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, John. Thank you, Mark, for being the matchmaker, like a proper Yente, and Sarah, of course. And I'm very pleased and honored to be here tonight. Actually, my only complaint is, John, that you put me on the same night with beautiful, amazing Freya, and I know what will people remember after this event. And it is not myself, but that's okay. Being the second one is also an option. So thank you very much for the opportunity and the platform. So yes, I'm Yossi Eshed. I'm an Israeli, 57 years old. Me and my wife are living here in Sydney. We moved here exactly 9 years ago. We have 3 grown-up children in Israel. Ron, she's our oldest. She's 31. And she lives in Kibbutz Magan Michael, and she owns the Amam herself, which makes us grandparents. She has a 1-year-old daughter. We have a 28-year-old daughter that is actually getting married next month. And we have a 24-year-old son who is now an officer in the intelligence in the army. So 3 of them are there. 2 of us are here, like a young couple. And this is our story. And if I need to tell you a bit about myself, I believe my journey starts in April 1941, when my father was born in Radauts in Romania to the war. And I always see myself as his representative. And he and his father were the only ones that survived the Holocaust. And in 1950, he made Aliyah with his father, went to Israel. And he is very proud of actually having 4 children and 12 grandchildren, and very proud of his tribe. And one of his sons, my youngest brother, which is a real star, and I can tell you what he's doing just because Hezbollah successfully leaked his details. If you Google Colonel Asaf Eshed, you will find out that he is the commander of the Air Force Base of Ramat David, which is the one Air Force base up north. And actually, my brother Asaf, he doesn't suffer for any lack of attention in the last few days, as his base is main target for Hezbollah in the last few days, where they try to attack the base. He is good, all is good, but this is the story of his life. And yes, I came here to be the fundraising emissary for the Jewish National Fund of New South Wales. And last January, I finished my time, 2 months after October 7th, I finished my time with the JNF. And then I started two very, very exciting roles. One is I'm the CEO of the Zionist Council of New South Wales, which is the organization that is responsible for the connection between the Jewish community of New South Wales, Sydney, and Israel. So it's all about the connection with Israel. It's all about Zionism. And our role has always been, and even more today, following October 7th, is to encourage, to inspire, and to strengthen our community when it comes to our Zionistic identity. And it's a bit of a challenge because, as we all know, it is a challenge to support Israel in today's day, following October 7th in general, and following the growing waves of anti-Semitism here. It only makes it harder. And quite frankly, Jewish people here now see that being proud Zionists and being loyal Australians, which for them always became one, actually it's not exactly one in some cases, and people need to pick side, and people need to hide their Magen David, and people often need to hide their Jewish identity. And there were polls showing that Jewish students in universities, in 60 or 70%, had the opportunity or had the case that they had to hide the Jewish identity at least once, if not more than that. And we need to go to them and inspire them and strengthen them. So since October 7th, we were the first, the Zionist Council was the first to bring a survivor. That was November. We brought a survivor from Kibbutz Kfar Aza that came here and told his story. We had several sessions with advocates when they taught Jewish students, but also Jewish people from the community, about how to respond on social media and when people are attacked them. In January, we also had a beautiful panel where a few people that went to Israel following October 7th came, and we had a panel where we gave them the opportunity to share the stories and actually to strengthen our people following their stories about how excited they were meeting with people and actually bringing the Israeli resilience back to Australia. During the week between Yom HaZikaron, the Memorial Day, Remembering Day, and Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, which took place in May, we had a lot going on with functions and activities of very meaningful ceremony for the Memorial Day, and two beautiful functions, parties for the young adults for the Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Days, including we brought an Israeli DJ that was playing in Nova Festival, and he was performing and running a trance party here, including telling his story when he played and he was in the Nova Festival. And we have a sing-along, beautiful Israeli music night where people came along just to sing beautiful songs. And we had an amazing, well-attended festival for young families with more than 4,000 people all together when they just celebrated Israel's independence. And now we are very, very busy organizing the big official ceremony for the community of October 7th. And maybe this is the first action item you can take for my talk, where I strongly encourage you, if you are in Sydney, to attend our ceremony. It will be a great honor for us to have as many friends outside the community as possible. This will take place on Monday, October 7th at night. And if you send me an email, and I hope I'll be able to share my email to you afterwards with the help of John, so you'll be able to get invitation and to attend and join us, of course, free of charge. We expect more than 5,000 people, and as many supporters outside the community would be amazing. So this is pretty much my role as a Zionist counsel. At the same time, I'm the managing director of IsrAID Australia. Now, IsrAID Australia is a beautiful organization that supports IsrAID and IsrAID global work. IsrAID is an Israeli organization that was established in 2001, and since 2001 till today, the organization gave humanitarian aid to more than 100 communities worldwide. Nothing about Israel, nothing about the Jewish world, is what we call in the Jewish world tikkun olam, where we help to fix the world. So since 2001, we were in Vanuatu, PNG, the Philippines, Colombia, Guatemala. We helped Japan after the tsunami. We are in Ukraine. We helped Turkey after the earthquake. We are in South Sudan. We are in Uganda. We are in Kenya. We were in more than 100 places, and we are both first responders, where we go to a place right after a disaster is happening, and we give the first aid. But we also usually stay in a place for 4, 5, 6, 7 years to rebuild communities. So it's about helping rebuilding communities. It's about helping with mental health. It's building field schools for communities. It's helping with water resources. Every place where we are needed, every place where we can help, we are there. And because we are using, in many cases, we are using Israeli technologies, so what we call to ourselves, or what people call us, is we are the humanitarian aid of the startup nation. Now, nice story to tell, just as an example, right after COVID started, because Israel was very successful in dealing with COVID, so people from Swaziland approached us, IsrAID, asking us if we can help them with their campaign. We approached Monday.com. Monday.com is a very successful Israeli startup that actually running CRM system platforms for businesses. So we brought Monday.com staff to Swaziland. They redesigned their platform, and we helped the people, the government of Swaziland, to run their campaign to help their people. Now, just to tell you, or to take you to the extreme, what we're doing globally, I'm gonna share my screen and show you one very special video where we helped to rescue women from Afghanistan. It's a short 4-minute video that was a report in CNN.
A group of 125 Afghans, female police.
Do you watch it? Can you watch it? Can you hear it?
We can hear, but we can't see. You got to press those two little buttons for sharing. Share screen,
Please
share
remind me,
sound.
what should they do?
So when you go to share, there's two buttons on the right.
Police
Share
officers,
screen.
judge.
Sorry,
it's not
I'm sorry. Going to,
share,
yes.
and here we go. Now it's starting. Got it? Need to expand the
Activists.
screen.
Is it okay now?
Yeah, it's okay now, but expand the screen.
Of course, yes.
And their
That's it.
families trying
Well
to
done.
find a way out. Female police officers, judges, activists, even professional cyclists and their families trying to find a way out by land or by air. Staying in secret safe houses along the way. For some, new passports made by Afghan diplomats abroad, transferred into the country. These now former police officers, their identities hidden over safety concerns, describe part of their ordeal while in hiding.
We were hiding at a location with other 120 people, but the location was discovered by Taliban.
We studied for 18 years and we helped with the recruitment of women to the police ranks. Our aim was to improve the potential of women and increase their numbers in the ranks of the security forces. In general, we worked very hard for Afghanistan, but now this opportunity has been taken away from us.
The already treacherous journey made even more dangerous because of the nationality of their rescuers. For Israeli NGO IsrAID, it was the second evacuation out of Afghanistan in a month, led by Yotam Politzer, who coordinated the rescues from a neighboring country. IsrAID had never before undertaken such an ambitious rescue operation.
The way it all came together was very was not planned. It was all kind of an emergency response after a very stressful couple of days of trying to cross through different places, including some very intense situations where the group was surrounded by Taliban. We decided that the only way out is actually a flight through the northern airport in Afghanistan through Mazar Sharif.
But negotiating with the Taliban to leave Afghanistan was only part of the battle. They needed a neighboring country, which we've been asked not to name, to transit through, and a third country where the group could be held before ultimate resettlement. A patchwork group of activists, wealthy donors, and more pulled every string possible.
People who were able to just pick up the phone and call this president or call this prime minister and influence them immediately to open their border.
The first group extricated by IsrAID, made up of female cyclists and members of a robotics team, ended up in the UAE, something that may not have even been possible just a few years ago. An Emirati Foreign Ministry spokesperson celebrated their arrival in the joint operation with the Israelis on Twitter. How did the Abraham Accords affect your ability to work with the Emiratis?
I think it's absolutely affected. I mean, there's no way that we could do it before. And for them, it was a very special partnership. They really appreciated the fact that it was like the first joint humanitarian mission. And in a lot of our conversations with really high-level government officials, they said that they want to do much more of that.
None of these rescues could happen without some serious financial support, much of which came from an anonymous family foundation and Canadian-Israeli billionaire Sylvan Adams. An avid cyclist, Adams felt drawn in particular to his fellow two-wheelers.
So many people, but specifically women, who have been given a taste of freedom and openness, including riding your bike, and today will be at best persecuted and possibly lose their lives simply for riding their bicycles.
And as a Jew, he says, it's his duty to help where he can.
We have this ancient cultural imperative. It's my obligation to try to practice tikkun olam, improving our world. So I get involved in situations where I know I'm blessed to be able to help.
After a 5-day journey, the second group made it to Albania, where they'll be hosted until resettlement. Hadass Gold, CNN, Tel Aviv.
Okay, so when one asks me why sorry, apology.
It's all good. It's all working.
Okay. When one asks me, how come I use my skills as a fundraiser to run an office, a fundraising office, in order to help people in Afghanistan or in South Sudan or in Vanuatu, whatever, when my own people needs me the most, clearly, because of the situation in Israel, I have two answers. One, I think fighting anti-Semitism is crucial. It's crucial. And one can only guess how much one should pay to get those 4 minutes in CNN with such a positive story about us as Israelis, as Jews. It's like priceless. And we do not do it for the media, but the media and the positive response is a great byproduct. So we are doing the right thing. We are helping the poor people. And at the same time, we get an amazing coverage worldwide, like the one we saw. And for me, the fact that I can, most of us, all of us are old enough to be parents or grandparents. The only way we can teach or educate our children is not by talking. It's not blah, blah. Words are fake. Words are cheap. Only example. The fact that I dedicate my time here in far Australia, so far from my children, helping this organization, those people, it means even today in our darkest time as the state of Israel, we still have the capacity to help the others. And I'm very privileged and honored to lead this organization here. But at the same time, I'm very busy also get funds to what we do in Israel, because IsrAID is very, very busy helping Israelis, communities in the north and in the south. And this will be the very last video I'm going to show you before I finish my part here in this beautiful night, to show you what we're doing in Israel. And again, I'm just happy to be a small a player in this amazing organization, in this amazing operation that help our people.
My name is Lotan. I'm from Kibbutz Be'eri, member in Kibbutz Be'eri.
My name is Tuval. I was born and raised here in Yitzhak. I'm a teacher.
My name is Noam. I'm Tuval's husband.
My name is Zohar. I'm 51 years old. I'm a social worker, married to Eina, a farmer in the kibbutz.
We both were here on the 7th of October. It started with massive bombings.
When the event started, we knew that this is something else.
Our area is 99% heaven and 1% hell. And in one day, it turned into 100% hell.
I remember going up the driveway and hearing bullets whistling near my ear, and I said something's wrong. It's not something that I'm used to. I look around and I didn't see no one, but I kept hearing sounds of bullets near me.
We got messages that told us we have to stay in the safe room, and then at some point, a few minutes after, locked ourselves in the safe room.
We stayed there for about 15 hours.
We started to get messages from people and started to hear bombs and gunshots around the house. We said goodbyes to some people. We didn't know if we were going to see each other again.
You could see in the WhatsApp messages where they started and how they're moving house to house. So you're just standing there and you're waiting to see when they're going to come to your house. I was scared and terrified inside, but I had to keep going and put on a facade. When the kids always ask us, I said, it's the army's shooting, it's not the terrorists. And just keeping them relaxed so they wouldn't shout, so people wouldn't know that we're in the house.
Part of the people didn't answer anymore, and we prepared ourselves to the moment they will arrive.
The military wasn't in Be'eri for a long time. in Be'eri, there have been hundred of terrorists. They came to kill.
Let me tell you, it's not a very pleasant thought for a mother to think how she's gonna kill her kid because she don't want them to get kidnapped.
At noontime, we knew the army is all around us, and we stay in in the house until the evening.
We got in our car and drove out of the kibbutz, and that's the first time we saw all the carnage.
In the midnight of Sunday, they took us to Eilat.
After the military rescue us from the kibbutz, we arrived here to the Dead Sea. We didn't know at the beginning where is everybody. After we understand the sad picture, it was really, really, really tough.
The first few weeks, we were like in a haze, trying to figure out who's alive, who's not, who's kidnapped, who's not. We were alone. We felt alone. Uncertainty is a very, very, very big enemy of mental health. It's really, it breaks you down from the inside.
When we arrived here to the Dead Sea, we didn't know what to do. We came with nothing. It was really a mess. And I think in this moment, I first met IsrAID. They started to organize clothes, hygienic products, mental care, social workers. We didn't even understand that this is the things that we need.
We've met IsrAID in the second week over there and started to plan with them our process of how to manage this situation. I did it I was in charge of the education part, but it was mainly surviving in the beginning.
I think the first month, at least, in the hotel was like a lifesaver, because we were together, we had to be together, we saw everyone at least once or twice a day at meals, we sat together for coffee, for drinks, for a smoke. You don't really have to even speak, just looking in each other's eyes.
For the community, it was very important that people that can take themselves roles can help.
We had to pinpoint which places we want to address. So education was the first one, so we can keep the kids at their routine.
With IsrAID help in the education part, we've built kindergartens, we built schools, we found teachers.
We need a building, we need tables, we need chairs. We want to open the school for the kids. After 2 days, IsrAID opened for us a place to study for our youth and kids. I was in shock. Are you kidding me? I'm talking with the education minister, with the government of Israel. They couldn't do it in 3 weeks, and you do it with 2 days?
The community decided really early, I think, if I compare it to other communities, even before December, like 2 months after the war, that we need to move.
This is as far as possible from our kibbutz scene. I love Tel Aviv, I love visiting Tel Aviv, but this is not home. We want to go home.
I want to go back to Be'eri. I want to go back to Be'eri. I want to rehabilitate Be'eri.
I think, no question about it, I'm going to come back and build it better.
We have to rise again on the blood of our family, of our friends, of our relatives. That's where we have to rise again, and that's very, very hard mentally to do.
The 7th of October, it's not an issue for 1 day. It's not 1 month, and it's not 1 year. It's with us forever. And the us, it's not only Be'eri members, it's the Israel community, it's the Jewish community around the world. Us, it's together.
This was a very, very sad and very harsh reminder, but we are one people and we need each other. We need Jews all over the world and they need us. And we have to remember that. And we have to be there for each other.
The hug that people like you gave us is really important and makes us feel we're not really alone again. But today is my first visit here in the kibbutz. It's hard for me to be here now because I'm really sad. I see the life I had and what I don't have anymore. And I'm not sure how I will have it again, even though I really want to.
Okay, so that's my story. John, apologies for being a little bit late. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm staying here, so if there are Q&A afterwards, I'll be very happy to take any questions. And if you're asking me what is your to-do list, two things, please. If you are around Sydney, I'll send you the link to register for October 7th. And if you have any way to spread out IsrAID's story, this will be amazing. Let's do it together.
Yeah.
And sorry.
Fantastic, Yossi. Awe-inspiring, especially, let alone we know Israel always stands in and, disaster scenes, they're always first on board, they're always helping all peoples, etc. That's a wonderful story on its own. But what you're doing with those people who have been taken out of their homes in the north is fantastic. I would invite you to put in the registration link in the chat and also give it to me and I'll send it out with the recording for later because there's many people who watch this after the night, the live event. We have many that check in on our YouTube channel, which David organises. So we will send out details for October the 7th. And you could also put in your own email address, if you like. And because I'm sure there are many, even in the chat, I can see people are asking where the event is going to be on October the 7th and how do they get in touch with you. And indeed, I'm sure you can go to the website and support what IsrAID are doing. If we get time at the end, I'll give you an update of what we're doing with the new Israel Allies Foundation, which will start very shortly also. But bearing in mind, we have another special guest. I want to introduce one of our newer members of the advisory board to SCAFI, Pam Culpert, who has joined not in place of Joy Halen, but as being able to be there in the future. So Pam has joined and she's the chair of CFIOIC in Australia, and we have wonderful times with her every few weeks as well in what they are doing. So welcome, Pam. Please unmute and introduce Freya. You got to unmute. You can't? We've got to ask you to righto, where are you, Pam? I'll just ask you to unmute. There you go. Ask to unmute. We've got you. Now we've got you.
Thank you. And thank you, Yossi. It is my privilege to introduce a wonderful, young, strong lady for this generation in this time. It's my privilege to introduce Freya. She is the director of the Centre of Youth Policy, commencing at the Menzies Research Centre. She's completing a Bachelor of Laws and a Bachelor of Commerce at the University of Sydney. Since October 7, she has used her passion for advocacy to push back against anti-Semitism on campus and helped co-found the Never Again Is Now movement with her well-renowned dad now. Hello, Freya. Lovely to have you here.
Hi, Pam. Thanks so much for having me. Awesome. Well, I guess I'll just kick off. Thank you, Yossi, for that. Yeah, really inspiring presentation about the amazing work that IsrAID's doing. I guess I'll just tell you, Pam sort of gave you a bit of a background about my story. But really, my passion is trying to reach young people and reach Gen Z. When you talk to people, when we look at the polling, there's a huge generational divide in people's support for Israel. Older Australians are overwhelmingly supportive of Israel and condemn Hamas. They don't support the anti-Semitic protests that are on our streets every week in Sydney and Melbourne. But as you get to the younger end of the population, and particularly Gen Z, which is my generation, so sort of 16 to 30, support for Israel basically drops off a cliff. In fact, the average Gen Z is more supportive of Palestine than they are of Israel. And as someone who's at Sydney Uni, the situation on the ground is even worse. It's not only support for Palestine, it's actually support and justification for Hamas and terrorism. So this has concerned me for a while. I'm very involved in politics. I ran as the Liberal candidate in my local area during the state election last year. And so I've always been passionate about politics, passionate about young people. But really, post October 7, the explosion of anti-Semitism on campus made me realize this is actually more than just a political fight. We need to address what's going on with young people. And so that's kind of what we did. I think it was a week after October 7, myself and a Jewish student on campus organized an impromptu rally on the main drag of campus, just 30 of us students, and it was really good. But as the war went on and October 7 kind of faded into distant memory for people, the situation really ramped up. It culminated in really the encampment, which lasted for 5 weeks. We had dozens and dozens of students camping on the grounds of the university, occupying the whole main lawn. Jewish students were basically unable to go to that part of the campus. I'm the president of the Conservative Club as well. And so we always fly an Israeli flag, is solidarity alongside an Australian flag. And that was repeatedly torn down, thrown in the garbage. We were abused for supporting Israel. And so it's been just a slow and steady, but constant escalation in hatred for Israel and consequently hatred for the Jewish people. It's really reached fever pitch in the last couple weeks, I'd say. There's a Senate inquiry into anti-Semitism on campus at the moment, which is good, and people are starting to realize what's going on. But to give you a bit of context, I'll just share with you a video of a student general meeting at USID. There were 800 students in the room, and the motion was to support Palestinian armed resistance. We moved a motion to condemn Hamas and condemn October 7. That was voted down 800 to 8. And so this is a video from my Instagram of that meeting. Oh, let me see if I can put the audio on.
Hamas is a brutal jihadist regime. You cannot say you stand for women and not condemn the rape of Israeli women. You cannot say you stand for queer people and not condemn. You cannot say you support queer people and not condemn Hamas, who takes a Sharia Islamic view of gay people and suggests they should be thrown off buildings. You cannot support human rights and not condemn a radical jihadist terrorist regime that has caused the death of all of these Palestinians and Israelis lives. Thank you.
Yeah. So I hope you guys all were able to hear that and see that video. Yeah. So that's essentially, that gives you a pretty good picture of what's happening on our campuses. It is a complete and utter travesty. The left and radical elements of the Muslim students groups on campus have joined forces and essentially hijacked the student body, completely obliterate us in terms of numbers at every one of these student meetings. They're very strong on campus. And so that's kind of what we're up against. Not to make everyone depressed, but that's what's happening. And I think the reason, I mean, it's just deeply concerning because of the incredible inversions these people are able to do mentally. You know, it's Israel that was attacked, but they're the ones committing genocide. It's Israeli women that were raped, but they're the evil ones. They just are they've completely distorted the situation because they're motivated by such deep hatred. And what is just completely disturbing about this is, if this is a picture into what Australian society will look like in 20 or 30 years' time, when these students who graduate today in the midst of the encampment and the anti-Israel hatred, when they're the ones leading the country in 20 or 30 years' time, I don't think Australia will resemble anything of what it does today, because these people are anti-Israel, but it's deeper than that. They're anti-Judeo-Christian, they're anti-West. They believe in tearing down everything that is good about our liberal, democratic, Judeo-Christian society. And so, yeah, for me, young people is really, it's a huge issue, and really we're struggling because, I mean, the Jewish people, unfortunately, numbers wise, there are about 15, 16 million versus over 1 billion Muslims. And then, so on social media, you're always going to lose because of the way the algorithms work. The numbers are stacked against us. And most young people don't watch the news. They don't read the newspapers. They don't listen to radio. And so people are basically being forced into these echo chambers where really, if you're not Jewish or you don't actively seek out pro-Israel content, you literally will not be exposed to any opinion other than the one peddled by Hamas and Iran. And that is genuinely what's happening now among young people. And so, yeah, that's pretty bad. And so what have Dad and I done to hopefully try and change some of that? Well, just after October 7, there was the rally down at the Opera House where they were burning Israeli flags and chanting "Gas the Jews." Dad and I actually went to that. Dad waved an Israeli flag in front of the crowd and then got chased away. And so really, since day dot, we've been determined to confront and expose this anti-Semitism. But all of these experiences combined together just made us go like, oh my goodness, Australia, it's not just, anti-Semitism is not just a Jewish problem. Anti-Semitism is something we all need to care about because it undermines the values of our country and our way of life. It affects everyone. And so we thought we need some sort of a movement or a group or something to get average Australians out who, you know, aren't necessarily Jewish, don't necessarily have a personal connection to this, but they need to realize that stopping anti-Semitism is something every single Australian needs to care about. If more Germans had stood up and fought against the Nazis in the Holocaust, maybe it would have been different. And what we really think is Christians. So my dad is Jewish, but he became a Christian as a teenager. And he's an Anglican minister now. we really think that Christians should be the ones leading the charge against anti-Semitism. It's very clear we owe a spiritual debt to the Jewish people. We understand the role of Israel. We understand why there needs to be a Jewish state. And the reality is the church for 2,000 years has often failed catastrophically to protect our Jewish brothers and sisters. And so we think that that is not going to happen on our watch. We will do whatever we can to mobilize the church to stand with the Jewish people, as is our duty, really. And so it's been a really incredible journey that Never Again Is Now has been on. It started with our first rally in Sydney in February this year. We had no money to run it, so mum and dad paid for it, $50,000 out of their mortgage account. We had no idea if people would come, but it was really just an act of faith, saying, you know, God, if you want us to do this, then we're going to do it. And 12,000 people showed up, and it was just the most amazing, incredible experience of unity and just standing for love. Then we did Adelaide, Melbourne, Brisbane, and now we've had over 30,000 people attend Never Again Is Now rallies around the country. And yeah, we've got one on October 7 in Canberra. So we think it's important that we have community events in the cities, but there also needs to be a presence in the capital because of the symbolic nature. Australia needs to know that we will never forget October 7. And and so Dad has now also finished up as a local Anglican minister. She's been doing for 30 years, and he's gone full time running Never Again Is Now and trying to grow it into, a really strong force to push back the hate and stand for love. So thank you, Pam. That's kind of the story.
Thank you, Freya. Just wonderful. Great to see just the energy and the young people that you're getting to come along. It's fantastic, the job you were doing. Of course, we've had a fair bit of contact with your dad, but I'm really pleased that you're with us tonight. We're going to open up for some Q&A. And if you'd like to ask a question of either Freya or Yossi, or pass a comment, we do this by raising our hand on the reactions button, and then we will ask you to unmute and ask your question. So if you've got a question, please put your hand up, and we'll try to get you. Mark has already raised his hand, and others can raise their hand as well. So just again, we've thank you, David. I put the wrong address in for Gmail. So if you'd like to join our database, be updated with events like Never Again Is Now, which is happening in Canberra. We're fully behind the organisation. We have lots of conversations with Mark and others who are leaders in NAIN. I would have been there myself on October the 7th, and then the ambassador is actually having a few people for a cocktail party afterwards. So unfortunately, I won't be able to get there, but I'm hoping you and Mark will be there, Freya. So the ambassador Amir has said he really loves what you are doing, and he is standing with you as you are standing with him, which is fantastic, and he needs that. Mark, can I ask you to unmute and ask your question, please?
Yes, thank you. I've got a couple of questions I want to ask Freya based on what she's just said to us. You were saying that the support for Israel in Gen Z has collapsed relative to older generations. Why would that be the case? Is it that the majority of Gen Z are going to the university system and being exposed to arguments against Israel there, or are there other sources for those kind of arguments? And also, how much of the pro-Palestinian rhetoric influencing the Gen Z students in the university system, how much of that is trying as in the form of, say, false intellectual arguments, as distinct from trying to sway their emotions more than anything else?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, I think there are probably sort of three forces that are, oh, maybe four forces driving this change. The first one would be just memory of the Holocaust, memory of real anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, most young people have never met a Holocaust survivor. For them, it's now kind of this intellectual, it's a concept, it's an abstract concept of genocide. And because they don't understand the gravity of it, what actually happened, and they haven't experienced that by talking to people and learning about it, they're then able to take that label and apply it to what is going on in Gaza or in Israel, whatever. So I think the first one is the fading memory of the Holocaust. The second one would be the anti-Western sentiment, which does, I think, come largely from the intellectual elites of our universities. But just this idea that we need to tear down the West, tear down, we're all white colonizers living on stolen land. That's the exact same line they repeat about Australians, and they also repeat that about Israel. And they literally chant from Gadigal to Gaza, Gadigal being the Aboriginal name for Sydney. So from Gadigal to Gaza, we will be free, or whatever the chant is. So I think the sort of Israel-Palestine issue has been, it fits neatly within this anti-Western narrative. And so that's also driving a lot of it. And young people basically have been taught to despise the West, feel shame about our history, and basically look for anything other than the Western world. And then I think the last thing is just social media. That is really where people get the vast majority of their information. And there is absolutely no guarantee that what people are seeing on there is actually true. A lot of it is complete lies. There's this whole genre of social media called Pallywood, Palestinian Hollywood, where they fake, kids dying and all sorts of things. And so it's a bit like, I guess, in the Vietnam War, it was the first war people saw on their TV. Now with this war, it's the first war that, you see while scrolling 24/7, and you don't see an objective view of it. You only see what people want you to see. And so those, I think, are kind of the three or four forces driving this. And you're right, it's not there. What's different about this is it does appeal to people's emotions, like, oh, the dying babies, but I think less so among young people. I think among young people, it's a very intellectual argument. They actually go, no, Israel is a Western colonial power backed by the US, and we need to destroy them as we need to destroy everything else that the West and Judeo-Christian civilization is about. So it's actually part of it's consistent with their new religion, essentially, which is anti-colonial, anti-Western. Yeah.
Thanks, Freya. That's a great answer. I saw Greg Rose had his hand up beforehand, but you've obviously answered his question. Professor Greg Rose, for those who haven't met Greg beforehand, he has agreed to join us as one of the directors for the Israel Allies Foundation. So we welcome Greg on board for what we're doing. Wonderful to have his academic prowess to handle some of these questions that are far beyond people like me to answer. Tim Wilson from Melbourne, I see, can you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, so Yossi, thank you for that video, which I only half saw because I was traveling and bits and pieces, but Karen and I were actually in Be'eri Kibbutz 2 days before the massacre and so we were fed lunch there. So and when I was in Israel in March this year, we just drove past down to the festival site. We weren't able to go in, so actually looking at that was quite. But Freya, I was wondering if you've asked the Gadigal to Gaza people where they're taking themselves, so they're not colonizing.
Where they're going to go.
Yes.
Well, I mean, this is the problem, right? It's actually a completely ridiculous idea. What does decolonizing Gadigal to Gaza actually mean? I mean, for them, well, actually, it's interesting. If you ask them what it means in the context of Gaza, they would say it means Hamas. It means armed resistance, basically driving out and killing Israelis. If you ask them what it means in Gadigal, I'm not so sure. I
Yes.
think thankfully we're not quite at the level of them calling for genocide of every non-Indigenous person. But
Given that would be most of them.
well, yes, and most of the protesters as well. So it's a completely absurd position. That's the thing.
Now, many generations ago when I was at Sydney University, we got, those of us that were conservative got quite jack of the socialist students having control of the student union, and we got the engineers and the ags and the country vets and the college students to actually had enough oomph to be able to get rid of the socialist politicians, one of whom has been my pastor for the last 30 years. So he did change his views. But so anyway, that was just a comment that maybe it's quite different now, and you would know more about that from the conservative side of things. But there was once enough students that could actually have some impact and at least increase your vote from 8 to maybe 80. But still, yeah. What was I about to say now that I've got the
Final question, Tim.
No, that's fine. That'll do. Thank you.
Okay. Well done. Thank you. Freya, again, as you said, many of us who are older, if you like, more mature, are friends of Israel, and we understand the Judeo-Christian morals and ethics that we have been brought up. What would your advice be to people of our generation about how we can help support you or the conservative or the younger people? What can we do to be of assistance to you besides turning up at the rallies and doing things like that?
It's a really good question. I think that's the most important thing, just continuing to meet in groups like this and keeping the flame alive. But other than that, I think one of the things we do need to look at more broadly is how we engage in the social media fight. We are completely outnumbered. And the problem as well is that a lot of prominent influencers who have, hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, their content is about completely unrelated stuff, but then the vast majority of them happen to be anti-Israel. And so what's happened since October 7 is people have taken these huge platforms and then used them to attack Israel. People like the Hadids, who are these, supermodels with millions and millions of followers, but their father is Palestinian, and so now their whole platform has become anti-Israel. People like that are extremely influential in our culture and our generation. On the pro-Israel side, we struggle to find those people, mainly because it's not cool. It's like the most uncool thing to be pro-Israel if you're a young person, and there's extreme personal cost associated with it if you speak out for Israel. So I think we need to think about strategies to better finance and resource our social media fight. To give you a picture of, how bad it is, the Australian Palestinian Advocacy Network, APAN, which is one of the big Palestinian lobby groups behind a lot of the protests, we've figured out they have a social media budget of around $6 or $7 million a year. Enormous. That's just for Australia. So that's what we're up against. I think the whole pro-Israel social media budget in Australia is probably like 10 grand max. And so that's something we're looking at Never Again Is Now, supporting influencers to speak out for Israel, running tours of influencers, taking them to Israel to make content, and then developing and growing smaller influencers and growing their audience so that they can be more impactful. But that's a big thing. So if you want to download social media and follow our accounts and start engaging in the online space, do it at your own risk. It can drive you completely mad, but that is the new frontier. That's I mean, we talk about this being a 6 or 7 front war. That's the 8th front. It really is.
Yeah. Thanks, Freya. That's we agree. As part, and by the way, Mark Leach, your dad, has again, he's going to be part of the board of advice for the Israel Allies Foundation as we work together. And we're hoping to be able, as a foundation, to raise a lot of money for education and for fighting back. I look at organisations like AJA, the Australian Jewish Association, who've got a CEO, they've got a social media expert, they've got a marketing expert, etc. And we need to take those steps to support IsrAID, to work with NAIN, to work with our Australian partners, of which we have more than 40 Christian organisations that are supportive of SCAFI and NAIN and what we do and how we go about it. So we're looking to up the ante, and we'll give details next month of the foundation that will be formed, hopefully by that stage, and the launch that we're planning for November the 20th of the Israel Allies Foundation with the Israel Allies Caucus, which are members of Parliament, of which there are more than 40 now, according to Andrew Wallace, who's the chairperson of Israel Allies Caucus in the Parliament. So we want to thank you, Freya. Thank you, Yossi. Wonderful. Great to have you with us tonight. And as usual, I'd like to hand to the Rabbi to close us out tonight. I think he's got a special little thing that he would like to do. Over to you, Rabbi. I'm going to ask you to unmute. There you go.
Thank you, Freya. You should remember that you know your Bible. The great prophets of Israel were always vilified, were always hounded, were always shouted down, and yet their works and their influence continues. And we look around at those great empires that tried to destroy the Jewish people, from the Egyptians, the Romans and the Greeks. They're in museums, and Am Yisrael Chai. People of Israel are strong. Israel is strong, and we will be victorious, and the voice of truth will prevail. Having said that, we need to disseminate that voice of truth, as very finely articulated through social media today, and please God, you will achieve this. As we approach the Jewish New Year, we say L'Shana Tova, should be a good year. The word Shana in Hebrew means year, but it also means change. So we hope that this year will be a year of change, and a change for the better.
There are many beautiful customs at this time. We eat round challah. Traditionally, we eat a long, elongated challah, but to remind us of the cyclical nature of the year, and indeed of life, we have a round challah. Another custom is we dip an apple into honey so that we should be assured that it will be a sweet new year. In the synagogues, we will be blowing the shofar, the ram's horn, to awaken our hearts to reflect and to repent on this great gift of life that God has given to us all equally. One of my favorite stories of the shofar harkens back to the days of old, where Jews lived in villages, and at this time of the year they came into the big cities and there prayed in the synagogues. The story is told of a farmer who brought his little boy with him for the first time. And there he was in this grand synagogue. People are fervently praying, and he certainly knew something was going on and he wanted to be a part of it. On that particular Rosh Hashanah, the rabbi was praying particularly with great fervor, and naturally this was felt by the rest of the congregation. At that point, the little peasant boy could not control himself. He did not have a prayer book. He was not familiar with the Hebrew language, so he took out of his pocket his shepherd's flute, and at the top of his voice began playing those shepherd tunes that he knew all too well. One can well imagine the uproar in the congregation as this little boy is whistling away. They did not look at him kindly and told him to keep quiet. At that point, the rabbi turned around to the congregation and said, "Leave the boy. He has helped me in my prayers." It's a simple but powerful story. At times, it's not about the prayers that we say and the language that we use. The main thing are these earnest cries that come from our heart. They are sincere and they are real. And perhaps this is what Hashem truly wants from all of us. So I'll share with you a few notes that we traditionally blow on Rosh Hashanah.